shekels, whatever it was, and of course they were going to do it later, but they just somehow never got around to it. So it would happen now and then. L'chaim, l'chaim. What have you got there, Ari?
It's empty.
Empty
So you wouldn't
cup.
know that.
I wouldn't know that. You see that? Elam Hazeh, it's that tricky place. Mine's full of God. Should I say Shechianu? I don't think so. Baruch atah Adonai Elohim melech haolam sha'akol v'yod.
Amen.
You want to make a shame here if you have the mug.
It's good?
Yeah, it's a good cup of coffee. Baruch Hashem. Okay. We got to a period. There we go. All right. So, the last thing we saw, we were transferring back into Parnasa. Page Nun Zayin, right? Or Nun Ches?
Nun Zayin.
Nun Zayin, right there at the bottom.
Why do this one?
Right. We're almost done. Okay, we're near the bottom.
Be careful, I have to go back to the army after that.
Taka. Okay. 12 lines up from the bottom of the page. We'll start from there. Ki'im. We saw it last time, but because we wanted to see this expression of it. Actually, no, I'm sorry. We got to Mikol Shekeh. So we got up to the words Ki'im. Right? So a person who sees Elokus in Elam Hazeh and realizes that there's no hafrada between Havaya of Elokim, and Elokim is simply the vehicle for the revelation of Havaya. So then that person will also act properly in business. Right? Why? Because they'll realize that what are they doing? What's the business? The business is simply the intermediary to draw down the Shefa Eloki. Just like the Malachim, the Mazalis, v'chulei, so to what we do in Gashmis. Ki'in, tzricha liyos naki nakiya, mikol nidnud iser v'chet. The business has to be clean from any nidnud iser means literally nidnud means small movement, but it means any smallest expression of iser. And chet va'az hayakli, then it's a kli sheyumshach al yada or v'chayas eliki lachayoseh. Then it's a kli that's a proper kli to draw down the bracha. What kind of bracha does the person want? Real bracha, holy bracha, chas v'shalom, to live and sustain oneself on bracha that comes down through actions of klipa. V'kol zehu, all of this is k'shemiyached shem Havaya v'Elokim. That's when a person brings about the unity of Havaya v'Elokim. In other words, he doesn't allow the reality of Elokim to conceal the reality of Havaya. Now, to put that in simple terms, he doesn't allow the natural reality to conceal godly reality. Havainu, she'ein shem Elokim master klal shem Havaya. That shem Elokim doesn't truly conceal shem Havaya. V'kol isavus, and all bringing into being whom Shem Havaya is from Shem Havaya, but it comes through, it's processed, so to speak, by Shem Elokim. And again, a person could read this and think, oh, so there's two gods. God forbid. The whole idea is to appreciate the fact that it's all one. So what's Shem Elokim, Shem Havaya? Simply different aspects of Elokus that allow for Elokus to express itself and be revealed in different ways. Right? The mashal is clear. Intellect. The Rav is the one who takes his intellect and limits it so that it can be understood by the student. Okay, so who's doing that? The Rav. It's the Rav's intellect. The same intellect that came to the understanding of the idea is the intellect that's allowing this idea to be expressed somewhere else. The intellect of the student. It's all the same intellect. Right? Some people are better at some things, and some people are better at other things. Right? Some people are better at understanding, but aren't very good at figuring out how to explain it to someone else. They have a hard time doing that, bringing it down to a lower level. Some people are very good at expressing on a lower level, but don't necessarily understand the most sophisticated ideas. Some people, they call them stars, are good at both, right? They really understand very, very deep ideas, but they can also express it in a very straightforward and simple form. Umamela, consequently, Yedeya, the person also knows, Shekolam Mutsoim, all of the intermediaries that are the vehicles by which that godly light comes from a place of infinite expression and ultimately expresses itself in finitude. Shekolam Mutsoim, Hema Malachim, Vamazolis, Einam Klum, they're nothing mitzad atzma in terms of themselves. Shehem Rak Shluchei HaShefa. They're simply the messengers for the godly flow. Kegarzim biyad, like the axe in the hand of the woodchopper. So there's no reason to beseech an angel to be good to you. Just like there's no reason to beseech the sun to shine down on your field more than his field. Right? The sun shines down indiscriminately. Right? Why? Without any bechira. So the sun shining down, and we learned this in B'yom Shtei, the sun will shine down and make the field grow and the wheat nice and golden, and the sun will shine down and make the garbage have a smell the likes of which that you Pashut can't walk within 500 meters of it. It's unbelievable how powerful the smell of that garbage is, right? Because a big huge pile of garbage with the sun beating down on it is an experiment in biology, right? And you don't want to be anywhere near there. Okay, same sun. The sun just shines because that's the nature of light. Okay, but what if I want light to be directed in a specific way? Okay, so then something beyond the light directs the light in such a way that it expresses itself in whichever way it is that it's supposed to express itself, depending on the desire of the one sending the light our way, so to speak. So too physical objects. They're simply vessels that in them are clothed godly energy. So a person who internalizes what he learns in Chassidus, when he looks at Eilam Hazeh, what does he see? So of course he sees the physical reality, but he also appreciates the godly reality of the thing, that this thing exists by virtue of the fact that the Eibishter is giving it existence, and it's not hiding the Eibishter, it's revealing the Eibishter. Right? Just one particular aspect of Eibishter. And that's a taste of Mashiach. Because when Mashiach comes, we'll experience that like we experience the existence of the book now, we'll experience the existence of the godliness of the book then. Therefore, it doesn't relate to the physicality itself as the ikar, as the most important part. The ikar is the godly energy that's being brought down through this physical object. Therefore, he's going to expend tremendous energy and effort. Therefore, when he's using Gashmias to draw down his own sustenance, he wants that to be a kli that's fit for godly light. It should be a proper kli, a holy kli, a pure kli. Therefore, he's not going to involve himself in unethical behavior, to involve himself in his business too much. Why? Well, because if he involves himself in his business too much, then at a certain point his business becomes something that stops him from learning properly or davening properly. Well, but then that means the business is not necessarily as proper a kli as it could be. We talked about, right, the Chofetz Chaim, right, that he only kept his makolet open for half an hour. Now, because he was the Chofetz Chaim, obviously everybody wanted to come, so he made a living in that half an hour. But in that half an hour is enough. There was you think it's only the Chofetz Chaim. It's before anybody's time here. Way back in the early days of being here in this building. We've been here, I guess, 20-something years or so. Now,
6 now.
No, Mayanot I think is 26. We've been here a little over 20. So across the street, where there's now the cleaners, that used to be a falafel place. And it was run by an amazing falafel, really good falafel. 7 shekels. Really good falafel. And if the guys didn't like lunch, there was a really good option across the street. Run by, what's interesting, lunch was an issue, and I'll tell you why. Run by an old Svardish guy. Just, sweet, salt of the earth Svardish guy. Just emuna pouring out of every pore. And he made falafel. And he had a certain quota that he needed every day to support he and his wife. That's all. I'm sure he must own in his apartment wherever he was living. He's lived here forever. So he and his wife needed a certain amount of money to sustain themselves. And he would make falafel until he had reached that quota, and then he closed the store. Sometimes he'd close at 11 o'clock, sometimes he'd close it at 1 o'clock, it depends on the day. Right? So how did he know? Well, he'd make a certain amount of falafel balls. And once those were gone, then that was it. He'd sold enough falafel balls, and he closed the store, and he'd go sit and learn in one of the little shuls over here on the street. There's all those little shuls with the curtains, so he would go sit in one of them. At one point, his grandson started helping him, because it was hard for him, and his grandson kept it open in the afternoon. Right? I guess, the grandfather took whatever he needed in the morning, and the grandson kept it open, and it lasted for a while, and the grandfather disappeared for a while, the grandson ran it, and then it disappeared. It turned into a cleaners, I don't know what happened. But that was his, in the 5700s, right? There was someone just making a living, just what he needed. He made his falafel. When he was finished making enough falafel for the day, closed up shop and went to learn Torah and say Tehillim. That was his life. An amazing life. I'm sure he had less anxiety than many. Right? There's that story about the fisherman, right? The fisherman off the coast of Mexico. So he's fishing, and he goes out. He finds a big fish. Finds this big fish. And then catches the fish, comes in with his fish, sells his fish, and sits the rest of the day on the beach, drinking tequila and playing with cards with his friends, whatever he does on the beach for the rest of the day. An American businessman came by, and you could rent out they could take you out and you go fishing in their boat. So you went out with them. This guy throws his rod in the water. By the time the rod hits the water, a fish grabs it. He goes, fine. So he says, "Well, you're amazing at this." He says, "I've never seen anybody so good at fishing." He said, "Yes." He said, what do you do? So he explains. So he catches his fish and he takes it in, and the rest of the day he sits on the beach with his friends. So he says, "Well, you could make a lot of money doing this." He says, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, you could bring in, 5 fish, 10 fish with your mazel catching fish. Every day you could bring in 5 or 10 fish." So the fisherman says, "Yeah, okay." And then, so once you bring in 5 or 10 fish, after a while you could afford another boat. You could buy another boat and get other people going out, and you could take a percentage of what they make. And you could soon, with your mazel catching fish, you could have a whole fleet of boats out there, and you could make a lot of money. He says, "Yeah." And then by 50 or 60, you could retire with all the money you made. He says, "Yeah." So what would I do? Well, then, you could relax and sit on the beach and talk to your friends. He says, "Well, that's what I do now." So why do I have to go through 25 years of all the anxiety of running a company to do? That's what I do now. Sometimes simplicity is best. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. Okay. So running a business, honestly, it's a real challenge. I mean, I've never run a business, right? But it's a real challenge. Right? There's no question about that. So also in Gashmias, a person has to see the Gashmias simply a kli for Elokus. V'lo yasek ben b'tachbulas v'ribu yasek b'yasek. V'lo yatridu, won't bother him. V'lo yabalbulu, can't let it confuse him. Which is a real avodah. That his involvement in the world won't prevent him from learning Torah properly, davening properly, and doing the avodah that he has to do, both on himself and relative to other people, etc. Tzedakah. Ubafrat, particularly, kasher be'emes These things, in terms of themselves, in essence, they're not put there by the Eibishter to stop you from serving from serving you. I mean, we pick on Eilam Hazeh a lot. We love to pick on Eilam Hazeh. So, oh, it's such a terrible place. It's such a desert. Okay, there's that aspect of Eilam Hazeh. There's no question. We've talked about this, right? But also the Rebbe talks about Eilam Hazeh as a gan. Basi Lagan. It's not it's the Shlomo Melech, but the Rebbe learns that pasuk many times in a Maimer, Basi Lagani, that Eilam Hazeh is a gan. And it's emphasized in Chassidus over and over and over again. The purpose of the creation of Eilam Hazeh is a dir b'tachtenim. That's why the Eibishter created Eilam Hazeh. That means, in essence, Eilam Hazeh is not a place that is contrary to Avodas Hashem. It's the place of Avodas Hashem. This is where Avodas Hashem happens, on a level far beyond anything the Malachim can do. The Malachim are jealous of us. One of the first things that, Tzvi Freeman, the writer, so he has an interesting imagination and writes things in an interesting way. So I remember one of the first things he wrote about the medrash that the Malachim were upset that the Eibishter gave the Torah to us. Right, like we're grub down here, physical beings. The Torah should stay up there with those holy malachim. So I don't remember the whole thing, but at some point, so the Eibishter says, well, just wait. So all of a sudden, there's this explosion of godly light and godliness, and the malachim go, whoa, wow, what was that? Oh, that was it. Jew doing a mitzvah. Another unbelievable explosion, right? And the Malachim are, whoa, what's going on down there? Oh, just those Jews doing mitzvahs. There's nothing. This guy he put a dime in a pushka, and this guy put on tefillin, and this guy went up to someone and put his arm around and said, "How you doing? You okay? You feel okay?" Right? And then these explosions that the Malachim are, then they hopped. I guess it's supposed to be down there. Right? But there's, we can let it get in the way, right? We're all old enough to know that. Right? You can let it get in the way. But the essence of Eilam Hazeh is not a place that's supposed to get in the way. It's a place that it is the playground in which you encounter Elokus. That's really what it is. And the Rabbeim are constantly trying to get us to realize that that's what Eilam Hazeh is. Understanding very well the challenges we have with the external reality of it all, the veneer of it all. It's there, it's real, and we have to deal with it. To figure out how to make a living. Right? That story, another story, right? When it comes to making a living, there's so many stories. Jews talk about it a lot. Right? That two neshamas, right? You know this story. There's a story from Zusha Vanipoli. Zusha tells the story that two neshamas, they meet. One neshama is coming down into Eilam Hazeh, and the other neshama is leaving Eilam Hazeh. And they meet in the middle. So the neshama coming into Eilam Hazeh says, "No, what's it like down there? Like I'm on my way. What goes on down there?" He says, "Well, you can get tzitzis for 10 kopaks." He says, "Tzitzis?" And this he knows about. He's heard about tzitzis. Tzitzis is like unbelievable. Tzitzis. You're surrounded by Elokus. You just put Elokus all over you. It's like unbelievable. He's so excited. Tzitzis, 10 kopaks. He doesn't know much about money, but 10 kopaks, he's heard the stories. 10 kopaks isn't very much. He's heard stories about people with their 10 kopaks, right? So I say, they bring up there, right? The Malachim, and every now and then they'll talk about, someone was collecting tzedakah and this guy only gave him 10 kopaks. Oh, okay, so that's not enough. So that's not very much money, that 10 kopaks. So he's very excited. Tzitzis for 10 kopaks. That's very exciting. So he starts going even faster, which is very nice for the lady who's in labor down there. So he's very right. He starts zipping down there even faster. It's all right. The neshama's in there before. He's zipping down there even faster, and the neshama going back up yells down to him, "But wait until you see what you have to do to earn those 10 kopaks." All the weirdness you might have to involve yourself in. I remember at Gimel Tammuz for Brengen, there was a former student. He was from South Africa, and he was here with his father, and it was a great for Brengen. I thought he was next to me, so I went up. What do you do? He said, "We have a business in South Africa." I said, "What's your business?" "Ball bearings." I said, what do you mean?" "We make ball bearings." "Okay." Now, obviously, ball bearings are very important, right? Like they serve a real function, but it's like, and Baruch Hashem, they make ball bearings. It's a good thing. I'm sure. Hopefully, they do it honestly, and they make a good living, and they give lots of stock of it. But it is an interesting thing to spend your whole day doing, right? Making ball bearings, right? Now, I understand why you're doing it. Everybody gets that, and it's good. But ball bearings, little ball bearings. I guess there's different size of ball bearings. When my wife and I were, whatever they call it, pagishaing, dating, whatever they call it. So she was a medical student, and I asked her why she went into medicine. So she said, well, she thought about it. You think about different professions, different things that people might do. She said the two professions where every day you go to work, you're helping people is teaching and medicine. She said about herself, I think I'd be a crummy teacher, so I went into medicine. That's what she said.
She's pretty good.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. But that's the Rebbe. That's because she, for a number of years, every answer she got any time she wrote the Rebbe was to teach Chassidus. No matter what she was asking about, the letter said teach Chassidus. So she finally got the message. And she decided she might have even called Gitti, I'm not sure, but she started teaching Chassidus. And Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Ubefrat, kasher be'emes, hari advar mitzaratzon iyefshar shinu v'yakvu mi'avedas Hashem. Elam Hazeh is not in the way. Elam Hazeh is the place to be in order to serve the Eibusher in the most powerful way. Me'achar she'eina me'elomis v'stam amitim. It's not true concealment, kanal ba'erech, as we explained earlier at great length. Shekolam b'mutzayim, all of these intermediaries, adarabba, okon torer, mevim esa'or v'shefa, all they do is bring down the light to, so to speak, a lower level. Ve'ech you loy l'maniya ve'ikuv l'avedas elokus. This idea, how can it be an obstacle to serving God? This idea of looking at Olam Hazeh that way is a thread that runs through all of Chassidus. Our Rebbe talks about it all the time. Right? To get out of that place where I'm constantly relating to Olam Hazeh as this unbelievably difficult, dark, terrible, horrible place. Are there all sorts of horrible things that happen in Olam Hazeh? Can Olam Hazeh be called a place of choshech, kafel, and makufel? Yes, 100%. There's no question there's that aspect of it. It's also the place where you serve God more powerfully than anywhere else. Mayim Rabim. What does the Rebbe discuss in Mayim Rabim? First explaining what the Mayim Rabim is, and then the Rebbe explains the whole second half of the Mayim is how the Mayim Rabim is actually helps the neshama reach a closer connection to the Eibusher than it had before it came into the Mayim Rabim. That's the true essence of the Mayim Rabim. The external expression of the Mayim Rabim is that it's the tirdus parnasa, the bilbul of life in Olam Hazeh, where it's confusing and confounding and difficult and crazy. You don't know whether you're upside down or right side up. Okay, there's that. But the pnimis of it, Mayim Rabim is a place that helps you reach out. V'rakshu bebechisus data, a person is the lowliness of his understanding, vis kashrusa, and his connection, but devar mechitzonim, to external reality. He forgets about the Eibusher. U'mechashev es devar magashmim u'metzias davar, and he relates to physical reality as something of real existence. It exists, but it's an existence with a small e, and elokus is existence with a capital E, so to speak. And he gives himself over to it. Now remember, the Rebbe Rashab is talking to people, this is 130 years, 125 years ago. Making a living was a lot harder than it is now, right? And they had to work harder just to scratch together, and people were poor, right? People were poor. But he's talking to those people and saying, even as difficult as it is in Olam Hazeh just to scratch together a living, don't let that get in the way of why you're here. Alachas kama v'kama, now we're making a living relatively as much easier, and people have much, much more, so to speak, free time. Right? Time when they're not at work. In those days, when were they not at work? Sometime Friday until Motzei Shabbos, and they got up, and Sunday morning they went back to work. And they worked very, very hard. And difficult labor, often very physical labor. It wasn't easy. It's a difficult life. Okay. And the Rebbe's talking to them. Don't let Olam Hazeh get in the way. Now, so for us, there's a certain challenge because our Olam Hazeh is so big, right, and so loud, right? For they were in black and white, right? We have color. Right? 1952, they able to put color in the world. So then, up until then, everything was black and white. So it was like a little toned down Olam Hazeh. Now Olam Hazeh is Technicolor, right? Pixels. Now it's pixel color. It's like wow. Okay. So there's no question that Olam Hazeh is bigger and grander and louder, and the seduction of Olam Hazeh is definitely much more powerful. There's no doubt about that, right? Because anybody in this room, I would assume, is in a situation. Now that doesn't mean you wouldn't have to figure out how to deal with it later, but you could probably, if you really wanted to, find yourself on some tropical beach in the next 36 hours. Just, you have this piece of plastic and you just figure out, use that. Now, it might not even be your money. You might have to deal with the consequences of this, but you could put yourself on that beach if you really wanted to. There's no problem. You could get to that beach. All right? Okay. People hanging out in Lubavitch in Belarus 120 years ago didn't exactly have those options in Gashmias. Right? Okay. So there's no question that there's challenges that we have that they didn't have. There's no question. On the other hand, there's advantages that we have that they didn't have. And the Rebbe's talking to them about that. And their Olam Hazeh really was. It was very difficult. It's mamish difficult. And the Rebbe's talking to them and saying, don't let it get in your head so that you can't relate to anything else. Don't forget why you're here. Right? Va'az, if I do, then hardehem meini ma'agrin. So then they can get in the way. They can prevent the person from expressing who he's supposed to be. Aval k'sheyiten date v'libe b'achdus Hashem. When a person puts his mind and his heart into the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'rak hu levadai, and he alone, the Eibishter, hu ha'neisen lecha koyach la'asa es chayil. He alone is the source of your ability to do whatever it is that you do. V'kol l'memutzaim, and all of the intermediaries, metaphysical and physical, heim rak she'al yedeyim over hashefa, and they're only the vehicles for bringing the godly energy and godly bounty to you. Aval le'ikar elakus, but the ikar is the godliness of it all. As lo yeh lo shum menei ma'akev klal mibayis u'michutz, then he won't have obstacles. V'yeh davak rak b'elakus, and he'll be connected to the Eibishter, because that's where he put his head. Right? And the Baal Shem Tov used to say, a person is where his Ratzon is. A person is sitting and learning Torah all day, but really wants to sit on the beach. Okay, so he's a wonderful person. He's doing his coffee, and it's great. And okay, but in terms of defining this person, who is he? He's a beach bum. Right? I mean, there are worse things in the world, but he's a beach bum. That's where his head is. That's where his Ratzon is. He really just wants to be on the beach. Overcomes that, and he sits and learns Torah. Okay, but that also works the other way around. What about the guy on the beach, who for whatever reason can't get it together, but really, what does he really want to do? He'd really love to go sit and learn Torah, or go open a business and get lots of stuff. So he's connected to that on a certain level. Right now he's sitting on the beach, right? But he's connected to that. It works both ways. Where is a person? Where his Ratzon is. Right? Heard a story about the Rebbetzin during this period of time. I mean, we're in the period of time, we're getting close to the end of it. And the Rebbe had his very serious heart attacks, because it wasn't just a heart attack, it was a number of heart attacks, on Shmini Atzeres, Tafshin Lamed Ches, 1976, so 77. So at some point, they went to the Rebbetzin and told the Rebbetzin what was going on, and she came to 770. And there was a whole discussion as to should the Rebbe go to the hospital, should the Rebbe not. Well, they were trying to convince the Rebbe to go to the hospital, and the Rebbe didn't want to go to the hospital. And so they realized they're not going to convince the Rebbe, but there's one person in the world who could convince the Rebbe to go to the hospital, and that's the Rebbetzin. So they were trying to convince the Rebbetzin to convince the Rebbe. And so there were a number of ways in which she deflected this. And at one point she said, Was my man will, ich will. What my husband wants, I want. Right? I mean, you're not going to get. Then they told her that, well, maybe what we could do is we could, they were giving the Rebbe sedatives, right? Because he had a serious heart attack. He needed to rest. So they gave the Rebbe evidently enough sedatives to knock out about 10 people, but the Rebbe was still awake because he wouldn't go to sleep. He wouldn't go to sleep until they promised him that they wouldn't take him to the hospital when he was asleep. Right? So they said, okay. But they asked the Rebbe, so maybe that's what we'll do, and then we'll trick him, so to speak. And she said, I've never done anything that upset my husband. I'm not starting now. They've been married 60 years. She said, I've never done anything that upset my husband. I'm not starting now. They said, but in the end it'll be good for him, she said. I'm not going there. She wouldn't let them do it. They ended up bringing an intensive care unit into the office, and even the major doctors who came right away were, New York, right? It's not hard to find some pretty serious cardiologists in New York. So the ones who came right away that night, so they left because the Rebbe wouldn't go to the hospital. And they said, we can't treat a patient without what we need, the equipment we need. So they got the equipment. They said later that if they had known that equipment was going to be in 770, then it would be better for the Rebbe to stay there because he wouldn't go through all of the hassles of being transported, etc., which can be difficult. But that's what they. But a lot of it had to do with the Rebbe's, right? And it was so interesting that his will is my will. Okay. So that's ultimately just a mushal of how we're supposed to be with the Eibishter. The Iskei b'Masa, and the parenthetically the Rebbe says, and his involvement in Masa Umatan, involvement in business, Yeh b'chitzonius haratzon, will be with his external will. He's going to have to run a business, or do whatever he does, right? But the Rebbe keeps bringing up that how did most people make a living in those days? They either ran a business or they worked for someone running a business, right? So if you're running the business, so of course you have to put your intellect and will into the business, but what aspect of it? Only the chitzonius of it, only the external expression of it. Your true ratzonius, meaning where's your head really? Your head is looking forward to getting back to the sugya you're in the middle of, in the Gemara you're learning with your chavrusa, or in the mimer you're learning in the morning, or whatever it happens to be. Or to see another, today, in those days not, but to see another sikha on the parsha. That's what you're really looking forward to. In the meantime, sorry, but say, I have to deal with this. So you deal with it properly, in an honest way, and in a holy way. But that should be b'chitzonius haratzon. Now, if a person has the good fortune to have make a living by virtue of doing things that in themselves are positive things, so then that's a real bracha. So a doctor should have his whole head in helping the patient, because that's the Eibishter. Your mom is the shaliach of the Eibishter to bring about the healing of this person. So their whole head should be there. Why? Right now I'm doing what the Eibishter wants me to do, mamish, not in some sort of external way, panemius. That's a big bracha to be able to make a living that way. But since it has to pass through through action, canal, based on that pasuk that we've seen before, Hashem will bless you in all that you do. In other words, you have to do in order to bring down the bracha, the way the world says you have to make your kli. But I have spent my whole day worrying about my kli and painting it just right, etc., etc. Just make a kli. Therefore, Mamela, consequently, if he's got his head on straight and he has his priorities in order, then his involvement in business will be the way it should be. But his ikr involvement in Elam Hazeh will be that he realizes he's here to bring about what has to be brought about in the world. And even if he's a very, very successful businessman, and that means he has a lot of responsibility, he has to spend a lot of time dealing with that responsibility. Okay, but ultimately, what does he really understand his responsibility is? Yes, of course he has to make all this money in the business. Why? So he can give lots of stock. Right? That's his responsibility. He's a gevir, and his responsibility is to give lots of tzedakah. That's why the Eibishter gave him all this money. Right? And he's going to spend a good deal of time doing that. And people are going to come to his house and discuss it, and he's going to have to work very hard to make sure that he's giving money to things that are really worth the money, etc., etc. That's also work. It's real work. And it's a real obligation. I had a friend growing up who was, his father was an extremely wealthy businessman, and he, this friend ended up getting frum, and he wanted to go into education. And he talked to the two rabbis who were responsible for getting him frum, and they said, no, you can't go into education. He'd be a great educator, incredible personality for it, really just a wonderful person. So they said, no. I know that's what you'd like, and we understand why that's what you'd like, but you have to go into business. Because you have the opportunity to make a lot of money and give a lot of tzedakah, and there are not many people with your opportunity, who, his father at one point, was trying to basically buy out the silver market, right? His father was like a big player in New York for a while, right? So he went into business. Still in business. Right? Gives lots of tzedakah. One summer he paid for the whole Mayanot summer program. Just took care of the whole. What a nice thing to do. It's so nice to be able to do that, right? You give tzedakah. Wouldn't it be nice to just be able to write that check? Like, what do you need? Right? Wow. For bringing too much today, but the Rabbi has told me a story about a chassid that he knew. He met him in the camps in Russia. He was a Polish chassid who was captured by the Russians. He was let out of the camps by the Russians, but ended up. So the Russians took them to Russia, and they had a choice: either go to the camps or join the army. So he went to the camps. Anyway, he was in the camps and he made it through, but it scarred him for life. He went back to Switzerland and made a lot of money. And he was a ger chassid. And this is a very common story, right? People went through the war that he couldn't part with his money because he had starved. And he thought, if I let my money go, I might starve again. And he just couldn't. So he found it very, very hard to part with his money. But he was a chassid. So he used to come to the ger Rebbe once a year. And he would give the ger Rebbe a blank check. He would sign on the check, give the Rebbe the check, and say, Ich kann nicht. I can't write a number on the check. There's enough in the account, you can write whatever you want. I can't. The Rebbe will. And the Rebbe would write a check for 100, 150, 200, 250, whatever, $100,000 the Rebbe needed. He would write that number, and he couldn't do it. But what did he realize? He had to do it. But he couldn't, so he gave it to the Rebbe. The Rebbe will write the check. That's a Yiddish thing to do, right? I understand why he couldn't. Should he have gotten over that? Fine, who are we to say, right? But okay, he still gave a lot of tzedakah. And if a person has his head on right, then Aziyah Sholem Bashem V'Terasa B'Avedasa. He'll be Sholem with the Eibshter. Aval. But if he does what the Dor Flugga was all about, and he separates Havaya Elokim, and he says, this aspect of reality is nature, and I have to deal with nature within the context of nature, and there's, so to speak, no Elokus there. And then there's this aspect of my life where I'm connected to the Eibshter, and he separates its synagogue and state, so to speak. That there's a true Helem. And that nature really is this immutable reality that runs. It's again, the Eibshter created it. Of course, he knows the Eibshter created it, but it runs in accordance with its rules, and it rarely ever bends those rules. Every now and then there'll be a little miracle, but I can't count on that in any way, shape, or form. Can't live my life in the context of it all being Elokus. I have to deal with nature on its terms. So what's the person doing? He's being mafrid, Shem Elokim from Shem Havaya. So therefore, and everything done in the world, is from Shem Elokim mitzad itself, so to speak. Which, the person isn't going to be as sophisticated to say that. He's just going to talk about nature. Therefore, he'll think that all the intermediaries are really the ikr. And that's where he gets his vitality from. So he's not going to necessarily think that he has to bring a plate of fruit to a malach, but he might worship the diploma on the wall, or he might really think that his parnasa is coming from the factory, and the factory is the true source of his parnasa, as opposed to the Eibishter being the source, and the factory is just the kli that the Eibishter is using to give him that parnasa. And therefore, what? He might give a little less tzedakah. If he realizes that the more tzedakah he gives, the more parnasa he's going to get, so then he'll probably give more tzedakah. But that's already l'mayla mina teva. Al pi teva, that doesn't work. L'mayla mina teva, it does. V'zeh shekosav ha'ozav havayas ha'aretz. Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, left the world. She'imrim she'ashpa lamata. They say that the hashpa below nimshacha is drawn down mi'amazoles, from the mazoles, right? Shehem ha'mashpim b'koyach atzmam, that they are giving from their own koyach. Not that they're simply the highway through which it all passes. No, they're the source of it. And he relates to the intermediaries as something of importance. The Rabbi is talking here about metaphysical things, but okay, also physical things. And since they are the ones that are giving him his chayas, if a person is going to think these metaphysical things are the source, so all the more so, he's going to think that the physical reality that he encounters, that's truly the source of his parnasa. Will involve himself with all of his energy in that, in the physical reality, in order to make more parnasa. This is Avodah Zarah. What's Avodah Zarah? Avodah Zarah is worshipping intermediaries and thinking that the intermediaries are the source of the hashpah instead of simply the vehicle through which the hashpah comes. Right, that's Avodah Zarah. Okay, so there's the Avodah Zarah bowing down to a particular idol, or a mazel, or a malach, or whatever it happens to be. There's also the Avodah Zarah of worshipping a diploma on the wall, right? That I think my parnasa comes from the diploma. Doesn't mean there shouldn't be a diploma. If you get a diploma, why not put it on the wall? It's an achievement. Okay, fine, that's good. Hopefully there's some pictures of the kids on the wall also. Right? That's a greater achievement, but okay, say they worked hard to get that diploma. Right? And it might be, it depends on what you do, right? But it might be the people who walk into your office would like to see the diploma so they know that you're actually the real thing. Okay, that's why most doctors do have their diploma behind them. So people will see, oh yes, this person actually did go to medical school, as opposed to, he went to Southeast Western Louisiana Tech medical school. One teacher and 3 students. Okay, I don't know. Can I trust him? Probably yes. Okay. Shouldn't pick on Louisiana. I should probably pick on Southeast, Northern, Central Massachusetts Tech or whatever. Right? And so he might involve himself in put a little too much energy in trying to make a living. He's bowing down to them. Why? Because he thinks they have absolute importance unto themselves. That they're actually giving him his sustenance. They're not giving him his sustenance. And therefore, now the Rebbe is going to explain something very interesting. Now remember what we're trying to understand. Why is it that Veyadaata that this pasuk is connected to leaving Mitzrayim and entering Eretz Yisrael? So now the Rebbe is starting to answer that question because we're near the end of the Maimer. Chazal say something very challenging. Of course, they said it in Chutz La'aretz. Masha Yisrael shebechutz la'aretz oivdei avodah zarah b'taharahein. The Yidden in Chutz La'aretz are idol worships b'tahara. Now, exactly how you do idol worship b'tahara is hard to understand, so that's what Rebbe is going to explain. Now, that statement could have been made by Tanoim, but it's printed in Talmud Bavli, which was printed in Bavel. L'chud ain't a mover. This doesn't seem to make sense. Aren't the majority of Jews in Chutzlaitz, which up until fairly recently that was the case for 2,000 years? It's now not, but it has been. The Ech Neymar al Roiv Yisrael, and how can we say about the majority of the Jewish people that they're idol worshippers? How can Chazal say such a thing? Achininu, the Geshem Shaveda Zara Begashmi is just like physical Aveda Zara. What does that mean? That he bends his head and bows down to stars and mazalis. To the sun and the moon, and he'll bring gifts of fruit to the sun, and he'll bow down to the sun, worship the sun. Mipnei, why? Because he thinks there is something of absolute importance. That from them is drawn his hashpah, and there's no question the sun plays a very important role in our well-being. So I thank the sun for all of this, right? Okay. We talked about it when we were learning B'yer Mishteyasar. When the waiter brings you the food, what do you say?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, did he cook the food? No. Did he buy the food? No. All he did was bring the food. Still say thank you. All right? Oh, now what's the difference between the waiter and the sun? Why don't you say thank you to the sun?
Those are
No free will. The waiter now, obviously, if he wants to keep his job, then the waiter has to bring you the food. But the waiter could theoretically put the food on your lap if he wants, right? Upside down. So you thank him for not doing that. Obviously, that's not good for him either. But the possibility exists. He could be doing something else. So by virtue of the fact that he's helping you, so you thank him for that. The sun, not about Bechira. You can appreciate the sun's warmth, but thank the Eibishter, not the sun, because the Eibishter put the sun there. Right? Just like if you really want to show appreciation for the meal, so go into the kitchen and thank the chef, because the chef made it. I mean, if you really were blown away by this meal, so go thank the chef. Right? And if the owner's there, thank him too, because he hired the chef, right? Okay. Because they really are responsible for it all. That's why if a robot serves you, you don't have to say thank you. And I guess that those days are coming, right? When a robot will bring you your meal. Okay, so you don't have to say thank you to the robot. You don't have to tip the robot. You have to express appreciation to the robot. You should tip the waiter, right? I mean, obviously, if they were nice and friendly. Right? You don't have to tip nasty waiters. Okay. So it's only if I think the thing is the source of my bounty that I will thank it. Oh, so if I bow down to the sun, it's because I'm relating to the sun as the source of that bounty. That the shemesh and the Yereach are the source of it. Canal. Shehem memutzayim, they're only memutzayim. Amnam hem rak, they are memutzayim. You do get sustenance from the sun, but as a memutza for the Eibishter's sustenance. Why? Because you're physical, so you're going to need it to express itself in a physical form. But not that the sun is the source of your sustenance. Amnam, however, hem rak garzin biyad ha'chitzi. He's relating to them as something real. As if they're giving it to him mitzad themselves. We're going to find a place to stop and then we'll stop. That's in Gashmis. So too in Ruchnias, meaning conceptual Avodah Zarah. What's that? When he relates to the physical things that are drawn down from the shemesh and the reich and shari kechavim hamazolis, and he thinks that they are the source of his parnasa. Now, in our context, that's going to be gashmis. Just like the one who in gashmis he bows his head, So conceptually, someone who's bowing their head to these intermediaries, relating to the intermediaries as more important than they truly are, they have their role, but there's something much bigger. So too in a spiritual, conceptual way. He bends and nullifies his intellect. So those things that are drawn down from these intermediaries. Gashmias. He puts his heart and his heart and soul, so we say in English, his intellect and his heart, his intellect and his emotions, be'esek b'devarim hagashmim, in his involvement in physical things, v'doyeg b'daigas parnasa, and he worries about his parnasa, v'esek kamatach bules b'yeskani, he might act in a slightly unethical way, b'masa umatan, v'choshev, and he thinks, shal yedei zeh yavich, he's going to win, he'll profit. And he forgets about the source of it all, which is the Eibishter. He's the one that's ultimately the source of all this. Then I was going to say next, we'll stop here. But if he loses, well, I guess I haven't worked hard enough, so he'll add more time to his business. Now, there are times when you're going to have to spend a lot of time at work. I mean, there'll be times when there's just a lot to get done, and it has to get done. I mean, tax season, I assume people who run companies are probably in the office a lot in tax season doing things with their accountant. Okay, there's times it has to happen. But it's a mindset that the Rebbe is talking about. What am I about? What is life about? What is Olam Hazeh about? That's the so. Where do I put my energies? We've talked about it in terms of education. Western education is focused on basically one thing and one thing only: getting a job. It's a trade school. And also wondering what your gender is. It's become a new thing.
Well, depends what day.
But I mean, in terms of the actual desire, is that you should, the people go to college in order to make a living. So you have to make a living. So I understand that I'm going to spend my essential intellectual expression is going to be in how to make a living. Oh. My essential intellectual expression should be about what's real and what's important. And I remember once being asked by a bunch of college students what I thought about all this gender stuff. So I told them I think it's the best thing out there. It's fantastic. So they were a little shocked to hear a dinosaur say that. Right? So why would a dinosaur say that? So I think it's unbelievably important that people should ask real questions about who they are and what they're about. Incredibly important questions. Their answers are absolutely the stupidest answers imaginable, which is usually what happens. They take some very, very important idea and turn it into idiocy. Okay, but the idea itself is very important. It happens all the time. There's defund the police. Great idea. Chazal talk about it. If you make some Mashiach, there's not going to be shotrim. Right? What does it say? Sheftim v'shetrim. That's what it says in Devarim. In Yeshayahu it says Sheftayach v'yoyatzayach. Your judges and your advisors. And it's explain why, because b'yemei Mashiach we're not going to need shetrim. What are the shetrim? The shetrim are the people who beat you up if you don't listen to the sheftim. But we're all going to listen to the sheftim b'yemei Mashiach. So b'yemei Mashiach, of course I don't want police. Not wanting police is a wonderful thing. Pretty stupid thing to not want police in Southside Chicago right now. That's a pretty dumb. What are you thinking? Right? But the idea is a fantastic idea. Of course, no one wants police. Right? We want to live in a society where people behave properly because they behave properly, not because there's some guy with a gun and a stick that's going to hit me. 100%. It's just called Yemei Mashiach. It's not called Southside Chicago in the year 2023. Bad place to remove police. Right? If you care at all about anybody living there. If you couldn't care less about the people living there and all you care about is your own virtue signaling, so fine, take away the police. But if you really care about those people, the last thing you're going to do is take away police because the police are protecting them. from bad guys. There's bad guys. Let's pretend there aren't bad guys. Okay. I feel good. Great. I don't care what you feel like. I care about that 8-year-old black kid in the south side of Chicago. There should be someone making sure that no one's shooting him. Okay. Fine. Most of the women, the feminist movement. Fantastic, incredible. What's Mashiach? Mashiach is the revelation of the power of femininity. That's what Mashiach is. But what? What did the feminist movement do?
Like a man.
Right. The women should be like men. No. Women should be like women. But no one knows what that is. And I don't mean in terms of the gender. No one, I mean, some people do, right? But you know, the Rabbi talks about it all the time. But in the Western world, there's no sophisticated appreciation of what femininity is. They appreciate masculinity, and therefore they think women should want to be that, which means they just hate femininity. No. Femininity has its own power, which is very unique and different, and has advantages over masculinity and disadvantages over masculinity, like most things. Right? Very few things are only advantageous and don't have certain disadvantages. That's just the way the world is. Right? Okay. Being rich has its advantages, but also has its disadvantages. Being poor has a lot of disadvantages, also has advantages. Right? When you go home at night and you're poor, you're not going to be interrupted 14 times by people knocking on your door asking for tzedakah, so you can actually talk to your wife. Right? Okay. I know people who, you know, they find it very difficult. I mean, they do it because they realize that's a avodah, but it's not easy. Every night at home that you have 5 knocks on the door from people asking for tzedakah, because you're on the route, because everybody knows you're a generous person. I had a friend who lived in Muncie. Sunday, he used to take his wife out to dinner in New York. He would leave 10 or 15 envelopes with the women who worked in their house, helping them. You know, they had a full-time person in the house helping them take care of the kids in the house. And that. He would leave envelopes with checks, and anybody knocked on the door, she would give the envelopes. He just said, I needed one night with it so I could talk to my wife without it. He said, you used to drive me crazy. So he used to leave, but he wouldn't leave without checks, and when they knocked on the door, they wouldn't get a check. They'll still get a check, because he realized that he's got to give a check. But he's eating dinner quietly with his wife and talking to his wife in Manhattan, and they're giving, and the help in the house is giving the check. I get that. I understand that. It must drive people crazy. Okay, that's a disadvantage of being rich, right? Okay. So there's advantages to being a man, and there's advantages to being a woman. There's advantages to femininity. There's advantages to masculinity, right? The feminist movement is amazing. It's incredible. And it's done some things that are very, very important. There's no question that a woman shouldn't be able to express herself as she wants to in terms of wanting to be a doctor or a lawyer or a business person, whatever. That's what she would do. But she should be able to do that. There's no reason in the world she shouldn't be able to do that. Fine. But often she, just like the man, doesn't relate to that as the truest expression of who she is. By her, it's even worse than the man, because the man, at least, an aspect of who he is that yes, his avoid is to go out there and do. Okay, so there's going to be an expression of that. Women, that's not their avodah. Can they do that? Of course they can do that, and they can do it very, very well. But that's not the ikar of who they are. The ikar of who they are is the pneumius. Women are about being, not function. Men are about function. Women are about being. That's why only a woman can give Jewish being to something. Men can't. A child that comes out of a Jewish woman has Jewish being. A child that comes out of a Jewish man doesn't, unless it happens to be that he had that child with a Jewish woman. His Judaism is irrelevant to that child. Only hers. Why? Because women are about being. So how do you create Jewish being? Women create Jewish being. Men don't. But interesting enough, what tribe are you? How are you going to express that? That's the man. That's the father. You're a Levi. Why? My father's a Levi. You're a Kohen. Why? My father's a Kohen. What's your mother? Irrelevant. Completely irrelevant. Now, if your mother's not Jewish, then you're not a Kohen, right? Mother's Jewish, father's a Kohen. He's a Kohen. Oh, He wants to be like his mother. Don't go there. All right, don't go there. Because there's advantages to both, and they both play their role. So feminism, the idea is a great idea. Mashiach is all about the revelation of the power of femininity. Shechina, 100%, no question. But not femininity that wants to be masculine, real femininity. What is that? Most feminists won't be able to tell you. What's the true power of a woman? I can get paid just as much by hitting tennis balls across the net as men. That's my power. That's a stupid expression, isn't it? And in all fairness, you shouldn't get paid as much because you don't work as hard. Because they play 3 out of 5 and you play 2 out of 3 in Wimbledon. So you shouldn't get paid as much. That's not fair. Right? Most people are not coming to see you. I hate to tell you. They're coming to see him. It's just the way it is. Right? There was that old incredible argument about soccer, right? That the American women's soccer players wanted to get paid as much as the men. Okay.